Right again?
Perfect.
Perfect. Awesome. All right. So again, welcome everyone to Community Data Watch Friday. We are today talking, my name is Risha Burke, and I'm the Executive Director for Community Development Halton, and I'm accompanied by Emin today, one of our social, what do we call him these days? Research associate. Emin does all sorts of amazing social planning work with us, and we're grateful. I'm grateful for her to be here with me today to help manage the chat. And so, yeah, if you're just joining us, please feel free to put your name in the chat. Let us know where you're coming from, organization, agency, concerned citizen, all of those things. Please let us know. I'm going to start with a land acknowledgement. We acknowledge that Halton is rich in the history and modern traditions of Indigenous people. And Halton is on the traditional lands of Mississaugas of the Credit, which is part of the Anishinaabe Nation that extends from Niagara Peninsula across Hamilton, Halton, and Toronto to the Rouge River Valley. We thank the Mississaugas of the Credit First Nations for sharing their traditional territory with us, and we are recognizing the enduring presence of Indigenous people on this land. And yeah, I think I spent some time, as always, this morning being grateful. It's been, I'll be honest, a bit of a tough week. And but was walking the dog this morning and appreciate that. I have a very stubborn bull terrier, and he likes to go his own way. And but I always think of him as he gives me the reminder that it's okay to stop and pause while he's sniffing, and doing his own thing. And this morning I just took the time to, yeah, I don't think. I've just been working so hard and so fast paced lately that I hadn't noticed how full the trees were and that they were blooming, and the leaves on most of the trees in my neighborhood are in full bloom. And yeah, I think the one thing that I'm always reminded about when I think about a land acknowledgement is that the land that connects us. And I'm very grateful for yeah, for the neighborhood that I live in, the privilege that I have. And so I just thought I'd share that. And just it's always a good idea if you're near a window right now or later on today, just to take the time to be grateful for the land that we're privileged to be on here on Treaty 14. All right. So for those of you who don't know us, we are Community Development Halton, and we like to say connecting community is what we do. We do that through two different programs, core programs. One is Volunteer Halton, which is a volunteer center for our community, and we are chock full of opportunities for volunteerism and civic engagement. We have a volunteer portal, education sessions, and we have a volunteer fair coming up, another one. We do volunteer recognition. We did National Volunteer Week, love to celebrate volunteers. If you haven't been to the portal before, Volunteer Connector, here's your chance. Scan the QR code. This is a portal that is free for everyone to use, and we offer free workshops to teach you how to use it and how to make a really great post to attract volunteers to your organization. If you're looking for a volunteer opportunity, this is a really great place to go. We are also the Social Planning Council, and we like to connect people to good information and then have conversations about it, like we're doing today. This is just a quick data hit of Halton's growing poverty. This is 2023 data on yeah, growing poverty. It's not exciting or happy data. It's kind of sad data. But when you think about the provincial average, I think right now for poverty is 18.1%. You can see how Halton has been creeping towards that. Just pre-COVID, it was around 12%. And for some of our communities are experiencing poverty more than others, and we'll see that again today through the data. We have lots of things that we do as a social planning council, social research, obviously, on important social issues. We convene community, like now, also in person, to try and spark collaboration to act on those social issues. And we like to lead policy and advocacy efforts for systems change. So that's some of who we are. And I want to thank, before I get going, to acknowledge the ongoing support of the Regional Municipality of Halton for their support for our social planning work and Volunteer Halton, but for this paper in particular, as well as United Way of the Golden Horseshoe, and who finds support for our research. And I cannot thank enough the folks who peer reviewed this paper. So every paper that we put out, has not just been written by us and read by us and put back out, but we actually share it with folks in community who have expertise. We tap you on shoulders to ask for your advice, and you really strengthen our work. Our work is rooted in community, and I'm grateful for you. If you'd like to be part of a peer review process on a topic that's coming up, please let me know. So, we're going to talk about social assistance. So here's the introduction. Social assistance recipients represent a major priority population for Halton region. So it's a really important topic, a group of people for us to be talking about. Many recipients remain far below the recognized poverty thresholds, and we'll talk about what those thresholds are and how far they sit there. The report that we have online, and Eamon's already put that into the chat, it's on our website. The report examines recent social trends in social assistance, the changes in the number of recipients and the average benefit levels over time. And we're going to talk about some intersections with household food insecurity, employment, and housing. We're going to talk about in the paper, we're going to focus on StatsCan tax filer family data. And this data set it is from personal tax, income tax returns. So this is a self-report, and it captures a broad concept of assistance. So it would include, when someone reports on this, it would include OW and ODSP and other types of municipal supports that someone might be receiving. So that's important to know the context of that. We also had access to the Ontario Ministry of Children and Community and Social Services data, and this is much more administrative records that capture individuals and families that are actively receiving benefits through OW and ODSP. So you'll see that will show up. And then there's also some other poverty measure data that we'll share. And then there's one slide related to housing that came from a Maytree Foundation Freedom of Information release on OW and ODSP data. And then it is from the Social Assistance Management System. And that data is very administrative data. And that was available to the province, and we were able to pick through that to find the Halton data. So we'll share that as well. So just to give you that kind of technical background. So understanding for anyone who's not familiar. So I'll go through this quick because I'm assuming that most of you are, but there might be someone here that who's not. So I just important to understand the context. Um, we have there's different types of social assistance in Ontario. It's delivered primarily through Ontario Works and ODSP, or the Ontario Disability Support Program. So you'll see those acronyms come up later on. Other supports that are out there include Ontario child benefit, the Trillium benefit, emergency assistance, and temporary care assistance. So important to know that as well. And there's federal transfers that could include the Canada Child Benefit, GST, HST credit, and a Canada Workers Benefit, for example. So program types and benefits amounts vary very much by family type and the number of people living in your household. So that's important to know as well. So Ontario Works provides temporary financial and employment assistance to people in financial need. The recipients you need to be 18 years old, and they're generally required to participate in job search activities, training, and community placements. They must pursue other potential income sources, such as employment insurance and child or spousal support. That's just from a ministry site. And the ODSP program provides a longer-term financial and employment supports to people with disabilities. Participation in employment activities is voluntary, and applicants must have a substantial physical or mental impairment and a disability expected to last 1 year or more. So there's some rules, guidelines around that. The report examines 3 family types, so that we're focusing on. There's couple parent families, so couples with children receiving social assistance. We have lone parent families, a single parent household receiving social assistance. And then there's non-family persons, which never sounds like a nice thing to say. These are StatsCan terms, so I'm referring to those. These are individuals not living in a census family, so they may live alone, they might live with relatives, or with unrelated persons, that's like a roommate or lodgers. What you should know here is that non-family persons, so those individuals living alone, they make up the largest share of social assistance recipients in our community. So these are the shocking benefit rates. You can see that they speak to, you can see the difference between the number of children that live in the amounts will range, but Um, I think the thing to just draw your attention to is like that single person receiving OW Ontario Works, with a shelter allowance receives $733, and that's a month, folks. That's a month. So you can imagine how hard that is. I know you can. Benefit levels are divided for OW and ODSP into basic needs, shelter allowance, and Ontario child benefits. Um, and non-family persons receive the lowest supports, and again, it grows with when you add children. And even with assistance, many recipients who struggle obviously to find housing, food, and basic living costs. Current rates remain insufficient to meet basic living expenses in Halton. It's just the end of the day. ODSP, a single person, again, with that shelter allowance, it's at $1,368. So substantially more, and it's been indexed for inflation, whereas OW hasn't. We'll talk about that later, but still not a lot. Social assistance, let's just look at who is in Halton. So OW beneficiaries followed a different pattern when we look at this. So you can see the chart here. This is from MCCSS, and so this is data that the region would share, thankfully, that they share that information. You can see that dip in 2021 with Ontario Works. This is very reflective of the fact that the pandemic happened and CERB happened. And so that was like a guaranteed income and for folks who end up receiving CERB. And we saw our poverty rate across Halton, across the province, across the country drop significantly during that time. So you'll see that difference. But we can see that OW has increased again since then to just over 4,000 folks in 2023. Key findings here, just that we, important context for understanding challenges in social assistance that, these numbers are growing in terms of the folks and we can make some assumptions around why those numbers are growing. We'd love to hear in their small groups, like what your assumptions are about why numbers have increased. But there are more folks receiving ODSP than OW in our community, and but the numbers are continue to trend up. And I would imagine unemployment, the cost of housing, when people lose their housing, it's very difficult to stay employed. There's all sorts of reasons. But I would love to hear from your personal experience later on in the small groups around why those numbers are increasing. So by family type, we can see that non-family persons make up the largest share of recipients, and then couple parent families have increased by approximately 20%, though. You can see that in the chart over here. The non-family person is the blue line, and then the green is the couple family, and then the lone parent family is the purple line at the bottom. The lone parent families have seen more of a gradual increase. Yeah, so we again just showing those increases, a slight dip in the non-family person, but again, still at over 5,000 folks in our community that are receiving assistance. And this is the tax filer data. So again, that's that combined. This is self-reported combined social assistance. This is tax filer data, again, looking at couple families by municipality. So are there communities that in Halton that have more folks that are in the situation? Couple families by municipality show that Oakville is the community that has the most at just over 1,600, and Halton Hills has the least. But you can see Milton has quite a sharp increase there. So they increased from 970 to 1,320 in this time frame. This is between 2018 and 2023. Burlington remaining fairly stable. Lone parent families by municipality. The story's a little bit different here. Burlington consistently has had the highest number of lone parent family recipients of social assistance based on this tax filer data, increasing Yeah, quite significantly, over time. And Oakville sort of maintained the second largest share of recipients. Milton shows a gradual growth, and then Halton Hills again has a relatively small and steady share of lone parent families. Lone parent families are more concentrated in Burlington, so that's that are receiving assistance. So interesting there. I'd love to have insights into why that is. We the data doesn't tell us that. Again, looking at tax filer data, the upward trend for non-family persons by municipality. So these are the folks living alone, not in a census family. And you can see this is just a steady slight increase, but fairly just a steady number. And this is from 2018 to 2023 again. Oakville accounting for the largest share throughout the period, increasing a little from 1,700 to 2010. Sorry, that should say in 2023. Sorry. Whoops. Um, and Burlington account for one of the largest shares of recipients, and Milton shows a gradual increase, and Halton Hills maintains the smallest number. So a kind of a consistent pattern there. Um, and we might think about, when you think about why is that, we might think about housing stock and living opportunities, social support systems that people gravitate to in a particular community. I don't know. Again, love to have your input. Average social assistance benefits. So this is, again, tax filer data. Lone parent families consistently receive the highest benefits, lone parent families. And so you can see those in the blue at 11,000. That's a year, though. So make sure that we understand that number. Couple parent families receive the lowest average benefit, and non-family persons receive the lowest average benefits. Key findings increased, lone parent families increased from 10 to 11,000 over that period of time. So if they that would be potentially if extra children were added to the family, increased for couple parent families from 8 to 9,000, and non-parent families increased from non-family persons from 6 to 7,000. ODSP rates were increased, started to be indexed in 2022, um, but the OW rates have not been indexed since 2023 for inflation. So that the amount that 733 with all in with the tax with the housing benefit is the same. And so if you had indexed it, it should be around $915 a month. Still leaving somebody in deep poverty, but we're quite behind. The province has decided not to index that, despite lots of advocacy on that point. What we've done is actually done a map here for the non-family persons, just so you can see how folks cluster. Again, it really just shows you that trend data that we showed earlier, where the concentrations are, but here it is by census tract. And you can see where folks who are living alone or not in a census family are living. Again, they receive the lowest amount. So we raised this one because these folks are probably one of the most vulnerable groups out there, with the single adult on OW without housing allowance at 390. Lone parent family with one child would be 642. But the housing costs, our average bachelor apartment between 2023 and 2024, has sitting around that 1,200 mark. So if you have $733 to work with, and that's how much a bachelor apartment costs, you haven't covered the cost of rent, and you certainly haven't eaten in that situation. So this puts people in a really difficult spot. So they face the deepest risk with deep poverty. And, thinking about what is deep poverty, social assistance, again, falls quite low. So deep poverty thresholds for a couple parent family is 39,000. A lone parent family is 28,000 and change. And for a single adult is 19. And you can see in the chart below, where the average social assistance benefits leave those families. You can see that they're short by significant amounts of money to be able to manage in our community. So for that couple parent family there, the shortfall is over $30,000 over 16 for a lone parent family, and over 12,000 a year for a single person. Very difficult situation for folks that social assistance rates leave people with. So just starting to think about those intersections with social assistance, we know that household food insecurity is linked to financial constraints and inability to afford basic needs. Approximately, this is data from Halton Region, our friends there. Shout out to Cindy who helped with this. Approximately 20.4% of Halton residents experienced food insecurity between in 2023 and 24, and households receiving OW and ODSP experienced the highest levels of food insecurity. Um, Key findings again here is like 70% of Ontario households received social assistance were food insecure in 2023, and 43% experienced severe food insecurity. Current benefit levels remain inadequate to cover food and housing costs. We know that this is data from Halton Region from 2025. Again, just showing you those one person household rates from Ontario Works and then from ODSP, just to again just to give you that look, and then to say the cost of a nutritious diet in Halton has been mapped out by our public health department, and for 1 month for a one person household, that's $454. So you can see that's really leaving people short if they're to eat nutritiously. ODSP again, same situation. Food is expensive; it continues to go up, and we're short by $885 or $243, depending on the program here, to cover basic expenses. Another intersection with social assistance is just some pieces around finding work. So under Ontario Works, recipients are allowed to earn up to $200 a month without any deductions from their benefits. Any income above that amount, though, is clawed back at a rate of 50%, meaning recipients lose 50 cents of benefits for every additional dollar that they earn. In contrast, ODSP recipients can earn up to $1,000 per month before experiencing clawbacks, making the program comparatively more supportive of employment. But income over that threshold is also clawed back at 75%, which can significantly reduce the net financial gain from work, particularly for those in a precarious and low-wage job situation. Um, we do have a new in 2019, so it's sort of still new. I think it's still rolling out in Toronto. Is Ontario has an integrated employment service system, and that began in 2019, and it changed how it provides employment services. The new system has brought together employment supports for those receiving assistance and Employment Ontario, with the purpose of helping to integrate assistance and help the provinces most vulnerable. This is a quote from the province, to help the provinces most vulnerable reduce those, including those with disabilities, to break free from the poverty cycle. Evaluations, though, show that there's some challenges to the program. There's a couple benefits, which we've listed, with some more benefits for people having access to some resources for job interviews, which is great. But we have found that finding decent work, or folks have found that finding decent work in the current economy is challenging. And there is a 20-hour or more week threshold that is a success rate. So if someone is going to is part of the program, they have to have at least 20 hours to be sort of checked off by one of our employment providers as a success story. This has been difficult for those in particular with disabilities. And I was just on a call with executive directors, and Julie from Stride was reminding us around the struggle that some organizations have had. And actually, there have been agencies that have walked away from the program because it's just not realistic in terms of helping those folks. 20 hours might not be the right benchmark for them if their lives are a bit more complex. There's also this is an incentivized system, and there are concerns that agencies are may have to focus on those who can meet the 24-hour threshold, and then those with more complex situations are sort of parked. So there's sort of a creaming and parked piece that's come up in the research and the evaluations that have been done by this, which you can find the references for in the paper. The new system has increased a lot of administrative burdens for lots of our nonprofit friends who are providing employment services. And in some regions, not Halton, but in some regions, the system manager role has been awarded to a private provider, so a for-profit provider who has more of a focus on profit. Not surprisingly, that's their job, which makes for an uneven system across the province. We're fortunate here that there is a nonprofit operating in the Halton area because, reading the research that has provided challenges in other places. So just many recipients report barriers to stable and adequately paid employment. Employment has often been part-time, precarious, and without benefits. And the benefit clawbacks can discourage transitions into employment. So this is often kind of called the welfare wall that happens with these clawbacks. So it doesn't always mean to lead meaningful employment and in financial improvement. So, and single parents are often facing additional barriers like unaffordable childcare or long wait list to affordable childcare and transportation barriers. So now moving on to intersection with housing. I want to keep moving here, almost done. Low benefit levels and rising housing costs contribute to housing instability and homelessness among social assistance recipients. And recent data shows a sharp rise in homelessness among OW and ODSP recipients in Halton. So this is the data that we had through Maytree, which comes from the ministry through an operational set of data that they had access to through a Freedom of Information release. So the key finding here is just that homelessness has increased. And this is a self-reported, so it should be clear, but the data self-reported homelessness increased from 109 recipients in 2019 to 483 recipients in 2025, people who have receive OW or ODSP and reporting that they are homeless. So that is what this data point is around. And that shows quite a large increase. And these are folks who had no fixed address, were transient, or were living in emergency shelter. So that was the population who was doing the self-reporting. So they're reporting to their workers that they're experiencing homelessness connected to their income. So I think, it's not overly surprising that there'd be a connection between housing challenges, homelessness, and living in deep poverty. So even though, I guess just to say all of that, we've looked at a variety of different sources of data, and although they tell a slightly different story, and the numbers are a little bit different because they're either self-reported or they're a combination of OW, ODSP, or their administrative data, but they all point to the same challenges at the end of the day, that, with frozen rates, particularly for OW, and deep poverty, with these rates leaving people in deep poverty, that the folks who are receiving social assistance in our community are having a really hard time managing in our community, and that those numbers have increased. So again, key issues: frozen rates, inflation has increased, and a person receiving $733 a month, for example, that's a real challenge. Average market rent for a one-bedroom apartment in Halton exceeds $1,700. Shelter allowances remain far below rental costs. Child poverty remains a significant issue in Halton as a derivative of all of this, and administrative barriers continue to affect supports. We know that social assistance benefits remain far too low. Non-person families continue to receive the lowest levels and are probably most at risk. Housing affordability, homelessness, food insecurity, and continue to go up. Benefit clawbacks and rising living costs and create financial barriers to stability. And findings suggest that the challenges experienced by recipients reflect broader structural pressures, including inadequate income supports, rising housing costs, and limited affordable housing. Could add the cost of food to that as well. Some of the calls to action that we came up with. Love to hear what you have to say about these and should something be added. But increase OW and ODSP rates seem to be an obvious one, and regularly index benefits to inflation so that they're not stagnant rates. Align employment policies, reform earnings exemptions and clawbacks, and reduce the welfare wall. Maybe address the challenges associated with the new employment system, expand affordable housing. That's something that we talk about all the time, increase deeply affordable and supported housing, find non-market rate solutions, expand rental assistance programs, support non-family persons by addressing barriers faced by these folks living alone, improve housing and employment supports, strengthen collaboration and advocacy. It's always going to be on our list, support local data and community collaboration to address these really challenging issues, advocate through Ontario's poverty reduction strategy. Hopefully lots of you had a chance back in the fall to have input into that strategy, and I know that our agency is looking closely to see what the results are of that consultation, and that we need to be speaking up as a community and making sure that we center lived experience, ensure recipients that are receiving OW, ODSP are included in planning and policy development, making sure that the actual experience of this situation is included in our situation.